The phone rang at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because I was just about to fall asleep. My apartment was quiet. The city lights from my window cast long shadows across the ceiling, and for the first time in a long time, I felt peaceful. Then my phone lit up. I didn't recognize the number at first, but the area code? That area code I'd spent 18 years trying to forget. I answered anyway. Zoe? The voice was shaky, fragile, older than I remembered. Danielle? My cousin. The one I hadn't spoken to in almost 3 years. The one who never called to check in. Never called on my birthday. Never called just to say hello. And now, at almost midnight, she was calling me. "We need you to come," she said. "Mom's in the hospital. She's asking for you." I sat up in bed. My heart started beating faster, but not from concern, not from fear, from something else, something I couldn't quite name. What happened? Kidney failure, stage 4. They're saying she might need a transplant. She might. Danielle's voice cracked. She might not make it. I let the silence stretch between us. 3 years of nothing. And now this. "Where's Marcus?" I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. "He's not coming. He said he has things going on. I can't do this alone, Zoe. Please." And there it was. Marcus. Aunt Patricia's golden boy. Her firstborn. The son who could do no wrong. Wasn't coming. Danielle. The princess. The favorite daughter. The one who got birthday parties and new dresses and unconditional love. Couldn't handle it alone. But me? The one who slept on a mattress in the laundry room for 11 years? I the one who was constantly reminded that I was a burden? The one who was told over and over again that I should be grateful I wasn't thrown into the foster system? Now they needed me. I should have felt vindicated. Part of me did. But a bigger part of me felt something I didn't expect. I felt tired. Not sleepy or tired. My soul is tired. 20 years of carrying weight that was never mine to carry is finally catching up with me. "I'll be there tomorrow," I said. I hung up before Danielle could respond, and I sat there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, remembering everything. The laundry room with the washing machine that shook the walls at night. The hand-me-down clothes that never quite fit. The birthday cards with $20 inside while Marcus and Danielle got parties and presents. In the chores that started at 5 a.m. and never seemed to end. The words. God. The words. "Your mother left you as a burden on me. I didn't ask for this. You should be grateful I didn't put you in the system. Aunt Patricia raised me, but she never let me forget that I wasn't really hers. And now she was dying. And her real kids, the ones she gave everything to, were nowhere to be found. But me? The burden? I was booking a flight. Because here's what they never understood. The way they treated me didn't make me bitter. It made me better. It made me into someone who shows up even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. Even when the people who hurt me don't deserve my presence. What happened in that hospital room changed everything I thought I knew about my family, about forgiveness, about karma. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why that phone call hit so differently, you need to know my story from the beginning. You need to know about the day I lost my mother. The day I became Aunt Patricia's charity case. The years I spent trying to earn love that was never for sale. And you need to know about the moment I finally stopped trying. Before we dive in, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. I want to know how far this story travels. And if you were raised by someone who wasn't your parent, a grandma, an auntie, an older sibling, a family friend, drop a prayer hands in the comments, because you know this life is different. You know what it's like to love people who remind you every single day that you're not really theirs. This is my story, and I promise you, by the end, you'll understand why I stayed when everyone else left. Let's go back to where it all started. The year my world fell apart. My mother died on a Tuesday afternoon. I was 7 years old. I remember that morning like it was yesterday. I remember the purple dress I was wearing, the one with little white flowers along the hem. My mom had picked it out for me the week before, said the purple matched my personality, bright and bold and full of life. I remember her braiding my hair in the bathroom, 2 plaits, pulled back neat and tight, with purple ribbons to match my dress. She always took her time with my hair. Even when she was running late for work, she never rushed. Said a little girl's hair was her crown, and crowns deserved attention. I remember her walking me to the bus stop, holding my hand the whole way, singing some song I can't quite remember anymore, something about sunshine and rainbows. Her voice wasn't perfect, but to me, it was the most beautiful sound in the world. I remember the way she knelt down in front of me when the bus pulled up. She straightened my dress, fixed a ribbon that had come loose, kissed my forehead, 1, 2, 3 times, like she always did. "Be good, baby," she said. "I'll see you at 3. And I said, "Okay, Mama." And I got on the bus, and that was the last time I ever saw her. She had a brain aneurysm, happened at her desk at work. Her coworker said she was laughing at something just seconds before. Said she grabbed her head, made a strange sound, and then collapsed. She was gone before the ambulance arrived, but I didn't know any of that. I was at school, learning about addition, practicing my letters, playing tag at recess. I was being a normal 7-year-old, thinking about what snack my mom would have waiting for me when I got home. Around 1:30, my teacher got a phone call. I remember watching her face change. The color drained out of her cheeks. She looked over at me. This long, sad look that I didn't understand. And then she told me I needed to go to the principal's office. I thought I was in trouble. I spent the whole walk down the hallway trying to figure out what I did wrong. Did I talk too much? Did I forget my homework? Did someone tell me to run in the hallway? When I walked into the principal's office, my grandmother was there. She was sitting in a chair, bent over, crying. I had never seen my grandmother cry. She was the strongest woman I knew. She grew up in the South during segregation. She raised 5 children on a maid's salary. She survived things that would break most people. But there she was, crying like a child. And that's when I got scared. "Baby," she said, pulling me into her arms. "Baby, I need to tell you something." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, stiff as a board, waiting. "Mama's gone," she said. "She went to be with Jesus." I didn't understand. "What do you mean, gone? She's picking me up at 3. My grandmother just held me tighter. "I know, baby, I know. But she said she'd see me at 3. She promised." "I know." "So she's coming at 3, right? She's coming?" My grandmother couldn't answer. She just cried harder, and I kept saying it, over and over. "She's coming at 3. She promised. She's coming at 3. Like if I said it enough times, it would be true. I didn't cry that day. I didn't cry at the funeral. I didn't cry for weeks afterward. I think some part of me was still waiting, still believing that my mama would walk through the door any minute, scoop me up in her arms, and take me home. She never did. My grandmother wanted to take me in, but she was 73 years old with a bad heart. The doctors said the stress could be dangerous for her, that she needed to rest, not raise a child. So she called her daughters. My mother had one sister, Patricia Jean Collins, the older one, the responsible one, the one with the nice house in the suburbs, the 2 kids, the husband with the good job. 2 weeks after the funeral, Aunt Patricia stood in my grandmother's living room and said the words that would change my life forever. "I'll take her." Everyone talked about how generous she was, how kind, how selfless. "Such a good Christian woman," they said, taking in her dead sister's child. At church, people shook her hand, hugged her, told her she was doing God's work. She smiled modestly, waved off the praise, and said she was just doing what family does. But I saw what they didn't see. I saw the way her smile faded the second we walked through her front door. I saw the look she gave me when no one else was watching. It wasn't love. It wasn't even tolerance. It was resentment. Like I was a stain she couldn't wash out. A problem she couldn't solve. A burden she never asked to carry. I just didn't understand it yet. "Come on," she said that first night. "Let me show you where you'll be sleeping." I expected a bedroom, maybe one I'd share with Danielle, my cousin, who was the same age as me. We could be like sisters, I thought. We could play together, do homework together, grow up together. But Aunt Patricia didn't take me upstairs where the bedrooms were. She took me down the hall, past the kitchen, to a door I assumed led to a closet. She opened it. It was the laundry room. Small, cold, the washing machine against one wall, the dryer against another. A single window that looked out at the side of the neighbor's fence, and in the corner, pushed against the wall, was a mattress. Not even a real bed frame. Just a mattress on the floor with a thin blanket folded on top. "This is cozy, right?" Aunt Patricia said. "Nice and private. You should be grateful. Some kids don't even have a roof over their heads." I nodded. Because what else was I supposed to do? I was 7 years old. My mother had just died. I had nowhere else to go. "Thank you, Aunt Patricia," I said. She didn't respond, just turned and walked away, leaving me alone in that cold little room. That night, the washing machine ran 3 times. I laid there on that mattress, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rumble and shake of the spin cycle. The walls vibrated, the floor hummed. The whole room felt alive with noise, and I finally cried. Not loudly. I learned quickly that crying too loud led to Aunt Patricia coming in and telling me to stop that noise. So I cried quietly, high into my pillow, muffling the sounds with the thin blanket that smelled like detergent and someone else's life. I cried for my mama, for my bedroom with the pink walls and the posters of Brandy and TLC, for the life I had just 2 weeks ago that felt like it belonged to a different person in a different universe. I cried until I had nothing left. And then I dried my eyes, turned over, and told myself I would survive this. I didn't know how hard that promise would be to keep, but I kept it. Every single day for the next 11 years, I kept it. Let me tell you about life in Aunt Patricia's house. There were 3 children living under that roof. Marcus, who was 9 when I moved in, Danielle, who was 7, the same age as me, and me. But we were not treated the same, not even close. From day 1, the line was drawn. And I was always on the wrong side of it. Marcus had his own bedroom, a big one, upstairs with a TV, a video game console, posters of basketball players on the walls. He had a closet full of name-brand clothes, Jordans, Tommy Hilfiger, polo. He had everything a kid could want. Danielle's room was even nicer. Pink walls, a canopy bed, stuffed animals everywhere. She had a vanity table with a mirror and little bottles of kid perfume. She had a toy chest overflowing with Barbies and dress-up clothes. I had the laundry room. No door. Just a curtain that Aunt Patricia hung up after the first few months because you should have some privacy. The washing machine that ran at all hours. The dryer that made the room hot as an oven. A mattress that was so thin I could feel the cold floor underneath me every night. But that was just the beginning. Let's talk about clothes. Every August before school started, Aunt Patricia would take Marcus and Danielle shopping. Back to school shopping, she called it. They'd come home with bags and bags of new clothes, new sneakers, new backpacks, new everything. Me? I got Danielle's old clothes, and not even the nice ones, the ones that were too small for her, or too worn out, or had stains that wouldn't come out. Sometimes I'd get Marcus's old sweatshirts, huge, baggy things that swallowed me whole. Kids at school noticed. They always notice. "Isn't that the shirt Danielle was wearing last year?" one girl asked me. Before I could answer, Danielle spoke up. "It used to be mine. She lives with us because her mom died. My mom is like super nice for taking her in." She said it like she was doing me a favor. I should be grateful for her leftovers. And the worst part? Everyone agreed with her. The teachers, the other kids. Everyone looked at me with pity, which was almost worse than mockery. Poor little orphan Zoe. So lucky to have such a generous aunt. I learned to make myself small, invisible. If no one noticed me, no one could mock me. If I stayed quiet, maybe I'd stop being a target. It didn't work. It never works. But I tried. Let's talk about birthdays. Marcus and Danielle got parties, real parties, with decorations and cakes with their names on them, and balloons and guests, and presents piled high on the table. I remember Marcus's 10th birthday. Aunt Patricia rented out the community center. There was a DJ, a bounce house, pizza, cake, and ice cream. All his friends from school came. He opened presents for an hour. Danielle's 8th birthday was a princess theme. Aunt Patricia hired someone to come dressed as Cinderella. There were tiaras for every guest, a 3-tier cake, goodie bags with jewelry and candy. My 8th birthday? Aunt Patricia gave me a card with a $20 bill inside. That was it. No cake, no party, no singing, no guests. Just a card that said "Happy Birthday" in generic cursive. "We can't afford to throw a party for everyone," Aunt Patricia said when I asked why I didn't get what Marcus and Danielle got. Couldn't afford it. But she could afford the community center for Marcus, and the princess performer for Danielle, and the dozens of presents they got every year. The math didn't add up. Even at 8 years old, I knew something was wrong. I stopped mentioning my birthday after that. It hurt less to pretend the day didn't exist than to be reminded every year that I wasn't worth celebrating. Now let's talk about chores. Marcus's chores. Take out the trash once a week. Maybe. Danielle's chores. Keep her room clean. Occasionally. My chores. Everything else. I washed the dishes every night. I did the laundry. Ironic, right? Sleeping in the laundry room and doing everyone's laundry. I swept and mopped the floors. I cleaned the bathrooms. I helped cook dinner. I folded everyone's clothes and put them away. I was 8 years old doing more housework than most adults. And if I complained? If I asked why Marcus didn't have to help? "He has basketball practice," Aunt Patricia would say. "Danielle has dance class. You don't have anything going on. I didn't have anything going on because they never signed me up for anything. Marcus had basketball. Danielle had dance and piano and art camp in the summer. I had chores, but the worst part, the absolute worst part, wasn't the mattress or the clothes or the birthdays or the chores. It was the words, the things Aunt Patricia said to me when no one else was around. I was 10 years old the first time she said it. I'd forgotten to wash a pot after dinner. Just one pot. I was tired. I'd been up since 5 a.m. doing chores before school, and my eyes were heavy. I washed all the other dishes, but I missed that one pot. Aunt Patricia found it the next morning. She called me into the kitchen, held up the pot like it was evidence of a crime. "What is this?" "I'm sorry, Aunt Patricia, I forgot. I'll wash it now." "You forgot? You forgot the one thing I asked you to do?" She slammed the pot on the counter. I flinched. "Your mother left you here as a burden on me, and this is how you repay me? By being lazy and forgetful?" I stood there, frozen. She wasn't done. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for you. I had 2 kids already. 2 good kids. And then your mother had to go and die and leave you on my doorstep." Tears streamed down my face. "You should be grateful I didn't put you in the system. You know what happens to kids in the system? You think you'd be better off there?" "No, ma'am," I whispered. "Then act like it. Wash this pot. And don't ever let me catch you slacking again." She walked away, and I washed the pot. And I cried silently, because I'd learned by then that crying too loud made things worse. That wasn't the last time she said those things. It became a pattern. Whenever she was frustrated, whenever something went wrong, yet whenever she needed someone to blame, there I was. The burden, the obligation, the unwanted child she got stuck with because her sister had the audacity to die. In public, she was different. At church, at family gatherings, in front of her friends, she was the saint, the martyr, the generous woman who opened her home to her poor orphaned niece. I couldn't let her go into the system. She'd tell people, "That's my sister's baby. Blood is blood." People praised her. They said she was doing God's work. They told me how lucky I was, and I smiled and nodded because that's what I'd been trained to do. But at home, behind closed doors, she made sure I knew my place. So I learned to survive. I stayed quiet. I stayed small. I did my chores without complaint. I got straight A's in school because maybe, just maybe, if I was smart enough, accomplished enough, good enough, she'd finally love me. She never did. But someone else noticed, and that someone changed my life. Her name was Mrs. Diane Washington, 7th grade English teacher at Jefferson Middle School, 50-something years old, silver streaks in her black hair, reading glasses always perched on the tip of her nose. She had this way of looking at you like she could see straight through to your soul. And for some reason, she saw me. Not the poor orphan, not the charity case, not the girl in hand-me-downs who never spoke up in class. She saw me, the real me, the one I'd been hiding for years. It started with my essays. Mrs. Washington assigned us a personal narrative at the beginning of the year. "Write about a moment that changed your life," she said. Most kids wrote about vacations or getting a new pet or the day their baby sibling was born. I wrote about the last time I saw my mother. I didn't mean to. It just came out. All those years of holding it in, and suddenly the words were flowing onto the page like water breaking through a dam. I wrote about the purple dress, the braids with the ribbons, the 3 kisses on my forehead. "Be good, baby. I'll see you at 3. I wrote about waiting for her to come home, waiting and waiting, until my grandmother came to tell me she never would. I didn't expect anything from that essay. I figured I'd get a decent grade and move on. But the next day, Mrs. Washington asked me to stay after class. My heart dropped. I thought I was in trouble. That was my default assumption. If an adult wanted to talk to me, I must have done something wrong. But Mrs. Washington wasn't angry. She had tears in her eyes. "Zoe," she said, "this essay, this is one of the most beautiful, heartbreaking pieces of writing I've ever read, and I've been teaching for 22 years. I didn't know what to say. You have a gift," she continued. "A real gift. Do you know how rare it is to find a 12-year-old who can write like this?" I shook my head. "Very rare, and I want you to know that I see you. I see your potential, and I'm going to help you do something with it." That was the beginning. Mrs. Washington became my mentor, my advocate, my secret weapon. She noticed things. She noticed that I never had lunch money. So she started bringing extra food to school, sandwiches and fruit and chips that she claimed she accidentally made too much of. She'd leave them on my desk before class started, pretending it was no big deal. I knew what she was doing, and I was grateful. As she noticed that I wore the same clothes on rotation, so she started giving me hand-me-downs from her niece, clothes that still had price tags hidden inside them. I'd find the tags when I got home, tear them off, and tell no one. She was buying me clothes, new clothes, and pretending it was secondhand to protect my pride. I never thanked her properly. I didn't know how. But I think she understood. Most importantly, she noticed my potential. She entered me in writing contests. Regional ones, state ones, national ones. I won 3. 3. Me, the girl who slept in the laundry room, winning awards for my writing. Aunt Patricia never came to any of the award ceremonies. She said she was busy. Marcus had a game. Danielle had practice. Something always came up. But Mrs. Washington was there, every single time, cheering louder than anyone. And in 8th grade, she sat me down for a serious conversation. "Zoe, I want you to start thinking about your future, about college." College. The word felt foreign, like something that belonged to other people, people with money and support and families who believed in them. "I don't know if I can," I admitted. "Why not?" "We're not. I mean, my aunt isn't going to pay for college. She barely looks at me most days. And I don't have any money." Mrs. Washington leaned forward. "There are scholarships, grants, financial aid. There are ways to make it happen if you are willing to work for it. And you, Zoe, you're one of the hardest working people I've ever met." She looked me in the eyes. "You are going to go to college. You are going to make something of yourself. And you are going to prove to everyone who ever doubted you that they were wrong." I felt something shift inside me, something that had been dormant for years, hope. For the first time since my mother died, I allowed myself to dream. But Aunt Patricia had other plans. I made the mistake of mentioning college at dinner one night. I thought maybe, just maybe, if she saw how serious I was, she'd be supportive. I was wrong. Marcus laughed first. He was 17 by then, a senior in high school, already signed to play basketball at a state university. The golden boy with the golden future. "College? For what?" he said, mouthful of mashed potatoes. "What are you going to study? Laundry folding?" Danielle giggled. She was always giggling at things that weren't funny. "She probably thinks she's smart or something," she added. And I looked at Aunt Patricia, waiting for her to defend me, to tell them to stop. to say something, anything, supportive. Instead, she set down her fork and looked at me with that cold expression I knew so well. And who's going to pay for that? Because I'm not. My heart sank. Marcus is going to the States on a basketball scholarship. Danielle's going to get into a good school for dance. They have talents. They have futures. She paused. Let the words sink in. What do you have? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that I had the highest GPA in my grade, that I'd won 3 writing awards. Mrs. Washington said I was one of the most talented students she'd ever taught. But what was the point? She'd already made up her mind about me. She made it up the day I moved into her house. Maybe even before that. So I swallowed my anger and said the only thing I could. I'll figure it out myself. Aunt Patricia raised an eyebrow. We'll see. And I did figure it out myself. From that day forward, I worked with a single-minded determination that surprised even me. At 14, I started making money under the table, babysitting, tutoring younger kids, cleaning houses on weekends. I saved every dollar. At 16, I got a real job at a grocery store. I lied about having my aunt's permission. Forged her signature on the work permit. She never noticed. She never noticed anything about me unless it was something to criticize. I worked before school and after school. I studied during my breaks. I stayed up late finishing homework and woke up early to do chores so Aunt Patricia wouldn't have anything to complain about. It was exhausting. But every dollar I saved, every A I earned, every scholarship application I submitted was one step closer to freedom. Mrs. Washington helped me with everything. She proofread my essays, wrote me letters of recommendation, drove me to college interviews when I couldn't get there on my own. She believed in me when no one else did. And in the spring of my senior year, the acceptance letters came. I applied to 12 schools, all with scholarship applications, all in secret. I got into 9. Full rides to 3. I remember the day I opened the letter from my first choice school, a university 800 miles away from Aunt Patricia's house, far enough that she couldn't touch me anymore. Dear Miss Zoe Thompson, it read, we are pleased to inform you that you have been selected for the Merit Scholarship Award, covering full tuition, or room and board, and a stipend for books and supplies. I cried. For the first time in years, I cried happy tears. I was getting out. When I told Aunt Patricia, she didn't congratulate me. She didn't hug me. She didn't even smile. She just looked at me with that familiar coldness and said, well, I guess you're finally off my hands. I left 3 weeks after graduation. I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases. It didn't take long. I didn't own much. Aunt Patricia didn't come to the airport. Neither did Marcus or Danielle. I took a taxi by myself. But Mrs. Washington was there. She hugged me tight, pressed an envelope into my hands. I found out later it contained $500 in cash, and told me to call her whenever I needed anything. You're going to do amazing things, she said. I always knew it. As my plane took off, I watched the city shrink below me, that house, that laundry room, that life. I was finally free, and I told myself I would never, ever go back. Let me tell you about the next 12 years in a few minutes. College was a revelation. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the burden, the charity case, the unwanted one. I was just Zoe, a student like any other, free to build my own identity without Aunt Patricia's shadow looming over me. I studied hard, made friends, joined clubs and organizations, discovered parts of myself I didn't know existed. I graduated cum laude with a degree in marketing and communications. Then I got a job, an entry-level position at a small advertising firm. Then a better job at a bigger firm. Then an even better job at a Fortune 500 company. By the time I was 30, I was a senior director. I had a corner office with a view, an apartment I paid for with my own money, a car I bought myself, a life I built brick by brick from nothing. Every success felt like proof. Proof that I wasn't what Aunt Patricia said I was. Proof that I was worth something. Proof that leaving was the right choice. But while I was climbing, Marcus and Danielle were falling. Let me tell you what happened to the Golden children. Marcus got his basketball scholarship. He was going to be a star, remember? Going to make it to the NBA. Going to make his mama proud. He lasted 1 semester. Got kicked off the team for drinking. Violated some code of conduct. Lost his scholarship and had to come back home with his tail between his legs. He was 20 years old, and he never recovered. He bounced from job to job. 7, maybe 8 jobs in 12 years. Quit them all. Said the bosses didn't respect him. Said the work was beneath him. Said he was meant for bigger things. But he never did those bigger things. He just kept living in Aunt Patricia's house, sleeping in his childhood bedroom, finding himself while borrowing money he never paid back. One time he stole some of Aunt Patricia's jewelry and sold it. When she confronted him, he blamed it on a burglary. Said someone must have broken in. She believed him. Of course she did. Marcus could do no wrong in her eyes, even when the evidence was right in front of her face. And Danielle? She went to college for 2 years. Changed her major 4 times. Dropped out. Got married at 22 to a guy she'd known for 3 months. Said it was true love. Miss said he was the one. They divorced by 25. He cheated on her with her best friend. Classic story. She moved back home with a baby, her son Jalen, and a whole lot of resentment. She worked, but barely. Entry-level jobs she complained about constantly. Lived in an apartment that Aunt Patricia paid half the rent on. Called her mother every time she needed money, a babysitter, or someone to blame for her problems. The Golden children, it turned out, weren't so golden after all. And Aunt Patricia? She enabled all of it. Paid Marcus's bills when he couldn't or wouldn't work. Bailed Danielle out of every mess she made. Made excuses for them constantly. Marcus just needs to find his passion. Danielle had bad luck with men. Always an excuse, always a justification, always a reason why their failures weren't their fault. But me? It's the one who worked 3 jobs to put herself through college? The one who never asked for a dime? The one who built a successful career from nothing? I was still the burden, the one who should be grateful. I kept my distance from that family. Christmas cards sometimes, a phone call on major holidays. Just enough to not be called completely ungrateful. But I didn't visit. Didn't call regularly. Didn't let them back into my life. Some people say you should forgive and forget. Reconcile and rebuild. Those people weren't raised in a laundry room. They don't know what it's like to spend your childhood earning love that was never for sale, to be constantly reminded that you're not really wanted, to carry that weight for years until you finally put it down. Forgiveness for me wasn't about repairing the relationship. It was about letting go of the anger so it wouldn't poison my life. I forgave Aunt Patricia in my own way, quietly, privately. Not for her sake, but for mine. But that didn't mean I had to let her back in. Until I didn't have a choice. Aunt Patricia turned 62 the year everything changed. I started getting phone calls from people I hadn't heard from in years. Neighbors, church members, old family friends. "Just checking in about your aunt," they'd say. "She doesn't seem like herself. Is everything okay?" It wasn't okay. Aunt Patricia had been ignoring health problems for months. Fatigue, swelling, weight loss. She told herself it was nothing. Told herself she was fine. Didn't see a doctor until she collapsed at a church function. The diagnosis was kidney failure. Stage 4. By the time they caught it, she needed dialysis immediately. Surgery eventually. Possibly a transplant. This wasn't a minor health scare. This was life or death. And where were Marcus and Danielle when their mother needed them? Marcus's response to the news: "I'll come by when I can. I've got a lot going on." He came by once, stayed for an hour. Most of that hour he spent asking about the will. Danielle's response: "Mom, I can't take off work. You know my situation. Can't you just hire someone?" Hire someone? For the woman who spent her entire life giving them everything, who sacrificed constantly, who chose them over and over again, they couldn't even sacrifice a few days. And so, 3 years after my last conversation with any of them, my phone rang at 11:47 p.m. "We need you to come. She's asking for you." The burden, the charity case, the one who slept in the laundry room. That's who they called when everything fell apart. And against every instinct I had, I said yes. The hospital was quiet when I arrived. Not silent. Hospitals are never truly silent. There's always the beeping of machines, the squeak of nurses' shoes on linoleum, the hushed conversations of families waiting for news. But it was the kind of quiet that settles into your bones. The kind that reminds you that you're in a place where people are caught between living and dying. I walked through the halls, following the signs to the room number Danielle had texted me. She was in the lobby when I arrived. She looked exhausted, older than I remembered. There were dark circles under her eyes and worry lines that weren't there before. "You came," she said. I said I would. She didn't hug me. We weren't huggers. We were never close enough for that. "She's awake. She's been asking for you." I nodded. "Where's Marcus?" Danielle shrugged. "Something came up." Of course it did. Something always came up with Marcus. I followed Danielle to the room, but I didn't go inside right away. I stood in the hallway, staring at the closed door, trying to gather myself. I'd waited 20 years for this moment. 20 years of imagining what I'd say if I ever got the chance to confront Aunt Patricia. To tell her what she put me through. To make her understand the damage she'd caused. And now the moment was here. But I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. "Go ahead," Danielle said. "She's waiting." I pushed open the door. The first thing I noticed was how small she looked. Aunt Patricia had always been a big presence in my life. Her opinions, her criticisms, and her expectations. Even when I was 800 miles away, I felt her influence. But there, in that hospital bed, she looked like a frail old woman. Her skin was grayish. Her hair was thin and unkempt. She was connected to machines that beeped and hummed with every breath she took. She turned her head when she heard the door open, and for a long moment, we just stared at each other. "Zoe." Her voice was weak, raspy, like speaking took more effort than she had. "Aunt Patricia." I stayed by the door. I didn't move closer. She gestured weakly toward the chair beside her bed. "Sit, please." I hesitated. Then, slowly, I walked over and sat down. We were quiet for a while. The machines beeped. Nurses passed by in the hallway outside. 20 years of words between us, and neither of us knew where to start. Finally, she spoke. "You came." Danielle called. "I know." She closed her eyes for a moment. "I didn't think you would." "Neither did I." More silence, heavy and thick. "Where are Marcus and Danielle?" she asked. "I thought they were here." "Marcus said he'd come tomorrow. Danielle went home to be with Jalen." She nodded slowly, like she expected that, like she wasn't even surprised. "My children," she said quietly. "I gave them everything." And there it was. Even now, at what might be the end of her life, the distinction remained. My children, not including me. Something inside me cracked. I'd spent years building walls around my heart, protecting myself from her words, telling myself it didn't matter anymore. I'd built my own life, and she couldn't hurt me now. But sitting there, hearing those words, I realized the walls weren't as strong as I thought. "You did," I said. "You gave them everything." She looked at me. New clothes, birthday parties, college tuition, unconditional love. You gave them everything they ever wanted. My voice was steady, but barely. And you gave me a mattress in the laundry room, hand-me-down clothes, a $20 bill on my birthday, and a constant reminder that I was a burden. Her face didn't change at first. Then something flickered across it. Not quite guilty, not quite defense. Recognition. "Zoe, I'm not done." She closed her mouth. "I spent my entire childhood trying to earn what you gave them for free. I thought if I was good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, you'd finally love me. You'd finally see me as one of your own." I felt tears pricking at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. But I was never going to be good enough, was I? Because I wasn't yours. I was just your sister's kid, your sister's problem, your sister's burden. Aunt Patricia didn't yell, didn't defend herself, didn't make excuses. She started crying, quiet tears rolling down her cheeks. Her hands trembled as she reached for a tissue. "Your mother," she started, then stopped. I waited. "Your mother was always the favorite," she continued. "Growing up, my parents loved her more. Everyone loved her more. She was prettier, smarter, kinder. Everyone looked at her and saw sunshine. They looked at me and saw, I don't know, the other one." I'd never heard this before. In all those years, she'd never talked about my mother with me. Not really. When she died, I looked at you, and all I saw was her. This little girl who looked just like the sister who got everything I ever wanted, who my parents adored, who everyone adored. She wiped her eyes with a shaky hand. "I hated her for leaving you to me, and I hated myself for hating a dead woman. So I took it out on you instead." She looked at me directly. "I told myself I was giving you a roof over your head, food on the table. That was enough. I told myself I wasn't obligated to love you the way I loved my own." A sob caught in her throat. "I was wrong, Zoe. I was so wrong." I sat there, processing. Part of me wanted to accept the apology, to cry with her, and to tell her it was okay, that we could start over, that all was forgiven, but it wasn't okay. 20 years of damage doesn't dissolve with one confession, and honestly, her apology was also an explanation. She had reasons for treating me the way she did. She had pain of her own. Did that make it better? Or did it just make it more complicated? "I don't forgive you," I finally said. Her face crumpled. I can't, I continued. Not yet. Maybe not ever. What you did to me, what you said to me, shaped my entire life. Made me believe I wasn't worthy of love. Made me spend years trying to prove myself to people who were never going to accept me. I paused. Let the words settle. But I'm here. And I'm not leaving. She looked at me, confused. Not because you deserve it, I said. But because I refuse to become the person you raised me to believe I was. Someone who abandons people when they're hard to love. Someone who only shows up when it's convenient. I leaned forward. I'm going to stay. I'm going to help you through this. And maybe, somewhere along the way, we can find something that looks like peace. Aunt Patricia nodded slowly. That's more than I deserve. Yes, I said. It is. And for the first time in my life, I saw something like respect in her eyes. I stayed for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of sitting by Aunt Patricia's bed during dialysis. 2 weeks of talking to doctors, filling out paperwork, making decisions about her care that her own children couldn't be bothered to make. 2 weeks of being the one she leaned on. And in those 2 weeks, I learned something about karma. Karma isn't always dramatic. It's not always a car crash or a public downfall or some spectacular moment of justice. Sometimes karma is just seeing clearly. Aunt Patricia spent her entire life giving her biological children everything. Unconditional love. Endless support. Excuses for every failure. Second chances, third chances, fourth chances. And in her hour of greatest need, what did they give her? Excuses. Marcus came twice during those 2 weeks. Twice. Both times the first thing out of his mouth was about the will. Mom, you need to make sure everything's in order, he said. You know, just in case. Danielle and I should know what we're getting. I was in the corner of the room pretending to read a magazine. I heard everything. Aunt Patricia, weak and frail and hooked up to machines, looked at her son with something like disappointment. Marcus, I'm trying to get better. Yeah, but we need to plan. What if something happens? I need to know if I'm getting the house or what? I watched her face fall. Just for a moment. Then she composed herself, made some vague promise, and Marcus left. He didn't ask how she was feeling, didn't offer to stay longer, didn't say he loved her. He just wanted to know what he was getting when she died. Danielle wasn't much better. She came more often than Marcus, 4 or 5 times, but every visit, she spent half of it on her phone, scrolling through social media or texting someone. She complained constantly about the drive, about the parking, about how hard this was for her. I'm so stressed, she said to me one day, as if I was supposed to feel sorry for her. You have no idea what it's like to see your mom like this. I just stared at her. You have no idea, she said, to me. The one who lost her mother at 7 years old. The one who watched her world fall apart before she was old enough to understand what was happening. I didn't respond. What was the point? Danielle would never see me as anything other than the charity case, the burden, the outsider who didn't really belong. But Aunt Patricia saw. She watched her children come and go. She saw how they acted, how they treated her, how their concern was really just self-interest in disguise, and something in her eyes shifted. One night, when it was just the 2 of us, she spoke up. They don't really care, do they? I didn't know what to say. What do you mean? Marcus and Danielle. And they're only here because they want to make sure they get their inheritance. They're not here for me. I could have lied, could have told her she was wrong, that her children loved her, that they were just stressed. But I was tired of lies. I think they love you in their own way, I said carefully. But they're not. They're not able to show up the way you need them to. Aunt Patricia nodded slowly. But you are. I looked at her. You're here, she continued. Every day. Every night. Helping me, advocating for me, taking care of me, and I treated you like... She couldn't finish the sentence. I know, I said. She reached for my hand. Her grip was weak, but firm. I'm sorry, Zoe. I'm so sorry. I didn't say, it's okay, because it wasn't. But I squeezed her hand back. After her surgery, which went well, all things considered, she called a lawyer. I didn't know what she was doing at first. She didn't tell me. Just asked me to step out for a few hours while she had a private meeting. I found out later that she was changing her will. The old will leave everything to Marcus and Danielle. The house, the savings, the investments. I wasn't even mentioned. Just a footnote. Just the burden of having to live there for a few years. The new will was different. I never asked for details. Never wanted to know. I didn't come to that hospital for an inheritance. I came because it was the right thing to do. But word got out. Marcus found out about the lawyer visit within 48 hours. He showed up at the house. The same house I'd sworn never to return to. The same house where I'd slept in the laundry room, full of righteous indignation. Mom, Odd, what are you doing? Danielle and I are your real kids. We should be the ones getting everything, not her. He said, her, like I was a disease, like I didn't have a name. I was in the next room, listening. Aunt Patricia's response was quiet but firm. Zoe is the only one who's been here. She's the only one who showed up. She's the only one who didn't ask about the will before asking about my health. Marcus sputtered. Don't talk to me about real, she continued. Zoe has been more real to me in the past 2 weeks than you or Danielle have been in years. I felt tears streaming down my face. I'd waited my whole life to hear her say something like that. To choose me. Just once. And she finally did. Marcus stormed out. Danielle cried and accused me of manipulating their sick mother, and the irony of being called a manipulator by 2 people who only showed up when the will was mentioned. I can't even, but I didn't fight with them, didn't defend myself. I just said, I didn't ask for anything, I never have. I just showed up because it was the right thing to do. Danielle scoffed. You always thought you were better than us. I looked at her, really looked at her, and said, No, Danielle. I just didn't have anyone to bail me out. I had to actually build something. She didn't have a response to that. Aunt Patricia recovered. Slowly, painfully, but she recovered. The surgery was successful. She still needs dialysis a few times a week, and she's not as strong as she used to be. But she's alive. She's 70 now. And we have something that resembles a relationship. It's not what it should have been. It's not what I deserved as a child. You can't undo 20 years of damage with one hospital stay and a few honest conversations. But it's real. It's honest. It's more than I ever thought I'd have with her. Sometimes healing doesn't look like a Hallmark movie. Sometimes it looks like 2 imperfect people sitting in a room together trying again, acknowledging the past without pretending it didn't happen, finding a way forward without sweeping everything under the rug. We talk now, really talk. About my mother. She tells me stories I never knew. About her childhood. I'm starting to understand why she became who she became. About the future. Whatever that looks like for both of us. It's not forgiveness exactly. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive her. But it's peace. A fragile, imperfect peace. And that's enough. As for Marcus and Danielle, Marcus still doesn't have a steady job. He's 42 years old and still blaming everyone else for his problems. He barely speaks to Aunt Patricia now, only when he needs money, which is often. She stopped giving it to him. Danielle is marginally more functional. She works. She takes care of Jalen, her son. But there's always tension when she's around. She still resents me. Probably always will. I've stopped caring. I spent too many years of my life seeking approval from people who were never going to give it. Trying to earn love that wasn't for sale. Shrinking myself to fit into a space that was never meant for me. I don't do that anymore. Their opinion of me doesn't define me. It never did. I just didn't know it back then. Letting go of that need for approval, that was freedom. But there's one person from that family I refuse to give up on. Jalen, Danielle's son. He's 17 now. Tall, quiet, watchful. He reminds me so much of myself at that age. He sees things, notices things, understands more than he lets on. He knows his mother has issues. I know his uncle is a disappointment, knows his grandmother's complicated history with me, but he doesn't hold it against me. If anything, he seems drawn to me, like he recognizes something in me that he sees in himself. A survivor, a fighter. Someone who knows what it's like to feel like the outsider in your own family. I've made it my mission to be there for him. I go to his basketball games, help him with college applications, take him out for lunch, and just talk. I tell him the things I wish someone had told me when I was his age. You're capable of anything. Your circumstances don't define your future. You have more potential than you know. Mrs. Washington said those things to me once. Changed my life. Maybe I can do the same for Jalen. I'm breaking the cycle, one kid at a time. If you've made it this far, I want to leave you with something. Not just a story, but a lesson. Something you can carry with you. Here's what I've learned. You can't control how people treat you. You can only control who you become because of it, or in spite of it. Aunt Patricia raised me in the shadows, made me feel like a burden, told me I should be grateful for the bare minimum, treated me like less than while giving her biological children everything. But she didn't get to write my story. She was a chapter, a painful chapter, but not the whole book. I built my own life, my own success, my own light, not because of her, in spite of her. And that light, that success, it didn't come from revenge, it didn't come from bitterness. It came from deciding, every single day, that I wasn't going to let her define me. Here's the irony. The children she gave everything to gave her nothing when it mattered. Marcus, who got the birthday parties and the basketball scholarship and the endless second chances, couldn't even show up when his mother was dying. Danielle, who got the canopy bed and the dance lessons and the unconditional love, saw her mother's illness as an inconvenience. But me? The burden? I was the one who stayed. Not because I owed her. Not because I'd forgotten what she did to me. But because I'd become someone who shows up. Even when it's hard. Even when it hurts. Even when the people who hurt me don't deserve my presence. That's not a weakness. That's strength. And here's what I want you to know. Whoever you are, wherever you're watching from, if you were raised by someone who never let you forget you weren't really theirs, if you spent your childhood trying to earn love that was never for sale, if you're still carrying the weight of being the family afterthought, I see you. You're not what they said you were. You never were. In the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, Who was supposed to protect you and nurture you and make you feel wanted? They failed. Not you. Them. Their failure says everything about who they are, and nothing about who you are. And your job now isn't to keep earning love that was never available in the first place. Your job is to build a life so beautiful, so full, so authentic that their opinion becomes irrelevant. You can do that. I know you can. Because I did it. From a mattress in a laundry room to a corner office in a Fortune 500 company. From hand-me-down clothes to a wardrobe I built myself. From being told I was nothing to knowing, deep in my bones, that I am everything. If I can do it, you can too. Before I go, I want to ask you something. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or your country in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. How many people are out there who need to hear this today? And if any part of this resonated with you, if you saw yourself in my story, even just a little bit, share your story in the comments too. You might think no one wants to hear it, but I promise you, someone reading those comments right now needs to know they're not alone. Someone needs to hear that they can survive their family too. Someone needs to be reminded that their past doesn't have to be their future. Be that reminder for them. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I tell stories like this every week. Real stories, messy stories, human stories. Stories about people who were counted out but counted themselves in. Stories about karma and justice. And showing up for yourself when no one else will. I think you'll like what's coming next. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next one. One last thing. I used to think my story was about being unwanted, about being the child nobody chose, the burden, the afterthought. Now I know different things. My story is about becoming the person who chooses herself, who shows up, even when it's hard, who builds, even when no one believes, who loves, even when love was never modeled for her. That's not a burden. That's a superpower. And you have it too. So stay blessed, stay strong, and most importantly, stay chosen. Not by someone else, by yourself. Because at the end of the day, that's the only approval that matters. I'll see you in the next one.